So today we're going to be talking about designing a DAO. DAOs are a pretty hot topic these days. There's a lot to be explored regarding governance, and DAOs are really pushing the conversation forward on the types of collaborations and ways in which we can collaborate, ways in which we can self-govern moving on in the future. So just to recap from last week when Vishal was presenting about DAOs, just using his definition, basically a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization where it's a group of people participating in a system where the rules of engagement and incentivization are written in code. The problems with this is that enforcement and moderation can be difficult because, in the ways that we're used to having police or regulators enforcing their laws, doing this with code is a lot more difficult, especially because of the jurisdictions that are open across the web, as opposed to having a specific location being tied to enforcement of a specific location. So I guess the other question is, what can be codified? Because there's a language difference there's a lossiness between natural language and code or math, and it's not directly transferable. So there are a lot of things that regarding human meaning and intention and such that is not adequately captured by code. However, I do think moving forward, code can help with helping people govern effectively. So how can DAOs help add to the governance conversation? We mentioned a lot of this already, but essentially we have been in situations, most of humanity has dealt with centralized governance for a long time. There are a lot of issues that we've been seeing of late. Lots of the structures have been failing in a lot of regards, and the thought is that potentially DAOs have the capacity to both decrease the corruption and the congestion of our current systems. So I guess the other thing to note is that centralization isn't necessarily bad. It's just currently it's in a state where it's definitely been very abused, and we're potentially seeing one of the poor conditions of centralized governance. So DAOs are actually a huge headache. If you were just to think about getting a group of people together to start a business, in terms of our current system, it is much easier to put something like that together. But with a DAO, since you don't actually know where the participants are coming from, you don't even necessarily know what their name is or anything about them other than what they communicate to you. They also, given those constraints in terms of enforcement, once you start the company, you have to work with, you have very little power leverage, because the only thing that you can do is kick people off the network or figure out ways to kick people off the network, or just not disperse funds to them. You can't necessarily punish them. And also, technically speaking, once you launch the code, it becomes much more difficult to make adjustments to. So lots of forethought needs to be put into place before you can launch a DAO. So the question is, why bother really with all of this headache if why bother with all of this headache? And the interesting thing about DAOs is, I guess, it's the capacity to proliferate social or societal hacker spaces at a global scale. And this is the first kind of, not the first instances, but the first technology that allows this kind of that allows for this kind of scale to happen. So you can basically choose any kind of social agreements that you want to have, and then anyone who wants to enforce it with some code, and then basically anyone who wants to partake can partake across the world. So I see this. What's happening is basically we can engage in social interactions at a very accelerated pace, and potentially being able to basically in the ways that labs are able to find social phenomena that ultimately can make its way into the real world. Basically, we were able to run through lots of different social scenarios now. And then basically potentially converge on much better social structures for a variety of different situations, as opposed to sticking with the few that we have right now. So where are we now? We're still in the very early stages of DAO development. As a technology, the first DAO was created about 5 years ago. And even at this point, there are no truly decentralized platforms. There's only platforms that have the plan to eventually become fully decentralized. So the race is still on, and you guys are pretty much like joining the conversation when people are still trying to figure out how to even create a fully decentralized platform that does not fall for the normal longevity and scalability issues that most DAOs have suffered so far. So there is a company or project, DEVXDAO, that MinorityProgrammers has been following and in contact with for a little bit, and at least from the thought process and the credentialing of the people that are working on this project, they could be the first to have created the standard for a fully decentralized organization. So now to say kind of a little bit more interesting things. This is the current DAO ecosystem. Obviously, it's not complete, but you can kind of get a better idea of the different types of DAOs that exist. Most of the DAOs, since DeFi has been all the rage, there are a lot of DeFi DAOs, and then there are a lot of other DAOs that are basically infrastructure to support the needs of the DeFi spaces. So mainly today, we're going to be focusing on the offerings of these DSaaS services. So basically, these are mostly Ethereum-based DAO infrastructure templates. So pretty much it makes it a lot easier to just go onto the website, choose a template, and then focus less on the coding and more on figuring out what kind of governance and tokenomic structures you think would be interesting to encapsulate the things that you want to do and have it run in a decentralized way. So on the left here are a couple of the DAOs that I'm a little bit more familiar with, that I've been engaged with over the last handful of months. That DEVXDAO being one of them. Moloch over here is one of the infrastructure kind of templates that we might be. We won't be having a walkthrough with, but it's. I do have links. I do have shared links regarding Moloch DAO below. But anyway, moving on. How our DAO started. So just starting with the templates that I just mentioned, we have Aragon, Moloch, and DAOstack. We're mainly going to be focusing on the Aragon platform today, but there are, as you can see, a number of other good candidates for starting your DAO. Again, these are some other useful infrastructure DAOs, or even services, not even DAOs, but for DAOs. So, for example, if you're interested in an automated market maker, you can use Uniswap or Balancer. If you're have some legal questions, you have Etherize or Open Law, and then There's also Claros that can arbitrate. It's basically a decentralized court that can arbitrate smart contracts and such. So there are a lot of different other services out there that can help support the external interfaces that you or DAO will need to survive. So Aragon walkthrough. So yeah, I've already got this open. So this is Aragon's just a template that I think is pretty simple to get started with. So we're just gonna in real time just create a DAO. So I already have my MetaMask wallet connected. So I first need to grab some yeah from my oops, why doesn't that work? Right. So yeah, I guess to actually, I'm just getting a bunch of test Ethereum from the Rinkeby faucet. So I'm just going through the paces right now. Oops. Alright, let's take this to the other channel.
It's kind of lagging a little bit.
Okay.
I show a lot of it, but I see you on the Rinkeby Aragon client right now.
Okay. I probably need to reconnect and do all that stuff again, since somehow that
it may be best to go over the rest of the slides, and then actually I kind of want to see this, and maybe with the flow.
Okay. Sure. I guess with Aragon, I don't know if you can still kind of see it. I'll spend like another 5 minutes on this. If it doesn't like work out super well, then I'll just move on. But regardless, here are a set of standard templates that Aragon uses. So you can just pick any one that you want. Type MPA. Say test.
I think there might be a delay in this. I wasn't semi-seeing anything that you're typing.
Yeah, like it's lagging. Like I just see the thing. So you might want to disconnect or reconnect, or go to the PowerPoint.
Sure.
On that end, but yeah. And so this is the DAO software as a service tool.
Okay, hold on, just give me 1 second. I'm gonna move this operation. Next to the router. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see any better now.
You gotta disconnect or reconnect because it's like
It's still super laggy? Okay, let me just I'll be right back.
It froze, it froze. Froze, and then...
Can you guys see?
Okay, yeah, I see. MPA test claim a name is there.
Alright, cool. So basically this was just the previous step. You can kind of see the percentage there. There are only 5 steps there, so just kind of go through the steps. you can kind of, they have a bunch of these apps included, and you can kind of add and download some other apps if you want to, but we're just going to stick with the basic template for now. You can just type in anything. And then here is basically obviously a template where you can choose some of the features that you want for your governance. Yeah, you can kind of like shift these around. Oh, crap, what just happened? Yeah, okay. Why did that happen? Did all that go away? Alright, well, that was quick. So you can just kind of, in terms of like vote duration, you know, if you want that to last like 7 days or 1 day or hours or minutes, like you can depending on the situation that you want, you can just pick anything that you want. So obviously, depending on the type of infrastructure that you and the social dynamics that you're trying to encourage, these numbers will vary depending on what you're trying to elicit from the users that you're trying to have on your platform. So test.
And what does token holders mean?
Oh, these are just so you can add the number of people that you want on the initial channel. So pretty much like, since I'm the first person on this DAO, I could add like a bunch of other people if I wanted to.
So you're whitelisting their wallet addresses.
Yeah. So I did, like, obviously I don't have I don't need to take on other people's information right now.
Balances mean on here?
So balances just means like how much you want in this system. So it's like, this is like you're kind of creating your tokenomics at this point in time. This is pretty much like
this is the way you want, or what? Like, is it how much, like, is it how much tokens they have to have, how much power in the voting system, like what's the balance it mean?
So I guess I'm not totally sure on that front. I'm just not 100% sure why it's not letting me move forward at this point.
Oh, this is a governance token.
Yeah.
Oh, this is how much you're rewarding for each person? Oh yeah, it says add members to define the initial distribution for the token. Oh, so this is straight up governance tokenomics right here.
Yeah, this is straight up tokenomics right here. So I mean, it's like, as you can see, it's obviously a super simple kind of platform. But pretty much like, if there's only one person, then you can kind of start with one person, and then you just kind of like have all the power at the beginning. But obviously, you would to add other people, you would basically be the only person voting in the system. So you would basically cast your coins into bringing other people into the system, and then now on new kind of votes, like just say a vote would cost 1 ether or something like that, then everyone kind of came in like with 1 ether because of that's like maybe the contract that you wrote to bring them in, and then on the next one pretty much like everyone has like 1 to vote with. Yeah. I'm not sure why this isn't working out.
You gotta
I'm wondering whether or not I
you gotta
they're like
a token symbol name. Like, you didn't add a simple name.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, the MOT, just put like MPA in the top on your token symbol over the balances. So like just put a balance and then put a token symbol above it, like.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Whoops! I thought that was like what they chose for me.
Yeah. No,
yeah. Okay. So yeah, very simple launch organization. Confirm. There, you got your first organization. So obviously this isn't very super impressive, right? Because they made it very easy to streamline a lot of those things. I guess the more interesting part now is just what do you want to do, and how do you want to incentivize people to both come and stay in the network, and also even potentially perform work on the platform as well. So those questions become a lot more interesting. But at the same time, all of these it becomes very easy for a person with good intentions and bad intentions to do fairly similar things. So, which is why there's like a lot of really, really not so good DAOs out there that have basically just been ways to take your money. So those are definitely things to watch out for, and they are hard to detect. Let's see here. So I guess
screen is blurred right now.
Can you see now?
It's like screen. Yeah, the screen is blurred right now. Like it's a blurry screen. I don't know if that is happening with y'all, but it's a blurry screen. You may need to exit and redo it again.
Better?
Yeah, we see the power.
Okay. So I guess the question is, what new interactions can you design with this template? Even though it's very easy to get started, the idea is how can you make it interesting, and how can you do interesting things with other people on it without it collapsing, having some sort of longevity. So when it comes to key concerns in designing a DAO, these are 4 that I have found and confirmed by people that know more about this topic than I do. But the idea is by kind of trying to combine these 4 elements, there are obviously an infinitely large number of different questions that you can ask to try to find the right balance that you want. So you can start off with something easier, like what do you want to do? How many people do you want on the platform? What kind of user base do you expect to have? What do you want people? How do you want people to engage in the short term and the long term? To maybe something a little bit more difficult, like what kind of voting system and tokenomics supports the governance and social dynamics you want to encourage and sustain. So yeah, all of these different elements will kind of, you ultimately want some sort of balance, and so you just need to keep asking questions until you're able to find some balanced structure that does the job for you. So general steps to designing a DAO. First, you want to establish your utility token, and then build your token mechanics, legal framework. Then you focus on really trying to use whatever language that blockchain language that you're using to encapsulate all of the details that you want implemented. So I guess first, for example, if you want to, say, establish your token utility, say you wanted to create like a good ideas DAO or something, you could just establish some principles, for example, like, okay, if when it comes to kind of interacting with other people, like these are the principles that I care about, how would I go about designing a token that would encourage all of these different principles, for example. And then you kind of build in token mechanics, which we will talk about in the next slide, and then we'll kind of touch on all these a little bit later on. So tokenomics design is generally broken up into these three categories: market design, mechanism design, and then token design. So thickness just basically means like how many people are going to be on the channel, how much congestion are you going to expect. Maybe that might be affected by how many people there are, but also depending on the computational weight of the voting structure, of the voting method that you chose. That might also add to the congestion as well. So there are a lot of, all of these are kind of interdependent, but they are also can be talked about separately. So safety generally talks about consensus protocols. Governance, we're talking about just like how you want decisions to be made. And non-financial incentives might be like the voting method. And so people might, instead of trying to earn tokens for financial reasons, they might be more interested in trying to earn voting tokens or reputation tokens for voting. Structure-wise, you need to consider both human and code kind of interacting with the structure. So how does that kind of play out? Token policy would be like monetary policy, so interest rates and such to affect, to punish people or just to kind of like collect fees for the entire system. Then you have financial incentives, which would just, that's pretty self-explanatory. And then architecture, we don't need to go into that. But the idea is these are a lot of questions that you would have to go through to just figure out how to design your token.
And this is general tokenomics, not specifically per se for governance tokens. And can you briefly explain like what are like governance tokens versus just the regular tokens, and then how like the current game is where like can you explain the governance tokens versus like a native token or something like that?
Yeah, sure. With normal tokens, I guess it really depends on what you're trying to do. So, for example, I guess, if we're trying to make something that models after, like, the dollar, for example, or if we're trying to model something like, we just want some, like, quick cash grab type of coin, right? There are a lot of different features that you would add to the token design that would basically be purely focused on a very specific number. So, for example, you might want to burn tokens if you want to just like increase the value or something like that. And it just kind of comes down to a handful of different parameters that you would just vary. With governance, for example, you might consider how a person would interact with people in such a way to promote good behavior. So, and then also, how to have the entire structure be able to make changes moving forward, and then also be able to handle all the problems, small and big problems that might come up that aren't necessarily related to, like, the actual rule set. They're just problems that might come up. So those are all like the Constitution, for example. You could potentially have like maybe like a judicial branch and a legislative branch and then an executive branch. So that would be different kind of elements of governance that you would want to build in to the system ahead of time, and then figuring out the social dynamics that would kind of come about regarding that. As opposed to just like, oh, if I just buy and hold and then use like, figure out some sort of bonding curve that would maximize my yields. It's a little bit more simple because it doesn't require as much consideration of social dynamics.
Yeah, and in terms of like that, when we're considering, making a kind of a utility token and then a token to vote with or a governance, and sometimes different projects might do that. They might separate the actual token that's more speculative with the thing that is really just so people can vote and interact with the system. And it may even be like in Tokenomics, I only give one token per vote because you might need one token for that, or maybe and I think you'll touch on this in the voting systems later, like, or maybe you need multiple tokens to vote, or you burn a token every vote. That also is part of the consideration in terms of governance tokenomics. That's different than the regular tokenomics, because you do want everyone to be an active participant and everyone as part of your ecosystem to have that token, and that's to be considered when designing.
Yeah, thanks. So there are a number of we're just going to kind of breeze through a couple. These are just examples of different DeFi DAOs that people can participate in. So MakerDAO is probably the most famous one, and Compound DAO. There's also Uniswap DAO. So these are just some of their processes that you guys can probably look up later. There's also the LAO, which is actually a legal structure-based DAO that's actually using the Moloch DAO infrastructure template. So this was an actual one of the at the beginning of 2020 there was a huge boom of people just using Moloch DAO, copying Moloch DAO's source code to create their own, and the LAO is actually one of the few that are still around, but it performs a pretty interesting function in the ecosystem. So laws surrounding DAO, though, are also an important topic, because even though we are focused on decentralized organizations, we still have to, we're still decentralized in an environment of centralized kind of litigious structures. So we need to pay attention to the interface with that structure, so that the DAO or your DAO or any DAO doesn't get squashed. So on that front, generally people have found that as long as you have some sort of standing as a limited liability company within whatever legal system that you're in, whether it's in Switzerland or in the US, then you're generally pretty safe. But otherwise, it's a little bit more. Otherwise, if you get sued for any reason, and basically the courts would basically get to decide what you are, and that is much more variable than basically having some sort of clear regulation around what the legal structure that you're dealing with is already considering you. So,
Switzerland in particular, because DEVXDAO is running their non-profit kind of wrapper in Switzerland. There's a lot of, Switzerland is a pretty preferred place, but yeah, do you know why?
Why Switzerland is preferred?
Yeah, because DEVXDAO is doing their nonprofit through there.
Yeah. So DEVXDAO, again, that's the company that we've been working pretty closely with. But Switzerland is probably has the most friendly regulations for in the crypto world right now. So in the U.S., pretty much only Wyoming, I think, has clear legislation of how DAOs are considered. Anywhere else in the U.S. is pretty much still it's a question mark regarding how they would treat you if you were ever sued. So whereas in Switzerland, like pretty much, yeah, you're home free. So DEVXDAO is basically, their main goal is to create the standard for DAO infrastructures. The founder of DEVXDAO is basically this lawyer with also a PhD in law and government, and he's basically spent the last decade of his life focusing on trying to create decentralized infrastructures. And so that's kind of his main goal. And then on top of that, he's using the DAO itself as a means to attract engineers and fund engineers so that they can basically help proliferate this particular standard so that they can actually make their platform the actual standard. And recently, they also are migrated from the Ethereum blockchain to the Castor blockchain. So kind of coming back to this diagram where we kind of talked about tokenomics, and then now this kind of mentions smart contracts as well, because the Casper blockchain is much more amenable to their needs. Regarding it allows for the type of token that they want, a reputation token, and then also the transaction fees are a lot less expensive, and they're kind of calling themselves like, Ethereum 3.0, which is a little gaudy, but we'll see if that's actually how it turns out, since the network is still about like 1,000th the size of Ethereum. So the DEVXDAO mechanism, so this is the legal kind of like interface. So they have this LLC, Emerging Tech Association, where they're able to interface with the rest of the world and take in any sort of funds, whether it's dollars or any other sort of coin. And then those can fund any of the DAOs that are in their network. The DAOs basically are members of this association board, and then the association board of the ETA basically just executes whatever the DAOs vote on. So as long as the voting structure of the DAOs is considered decentralized, then this quote unquote like centralized structure in the normal legal world is actually still decentralized, even though it has a quote unquote like centralized wrapper around it. So this is where a lot of other companies seem to flounder, because this interface seems to not work out in their favor. So that's how they've kind of got around the legal wrapper problem, such that the legal wrapper doesn't actually interfere with the decentralized nature of the platform. Also, they're using NFT reputation voting. So this is the basis for their sustained decentralization plan. And so that any other DAO that also comes onto the network has to agree to this reputation-based structure, so that pretty much like the structure will indefinitely stay decentralized. So DEVXDAO Design, I guess, kind of bring this back full circle, where we can talk about what do they really want. They just want to build a truly decentralized platform. So that... Oh, I think someone's watching anime in the background or something. So don't know who's in the back, who's got their mic on, but it's.
I thought I muted. Apparently, I just muted it for me. But
yeah, sure. But anyway, so again, to reiterate, DEVXDAO basically just wants to create a truly decentralized platform so that we can proliferate decentralized governance amidst the kind of chaos that we're suffering from now, to decrease corruption and the congestion of our current systems without the normal problems of longevity and scale. So to kind of bring back the harder question that I brought up earlier, what kind of voting system and tokenomics support and governance supports the governance and social dynamics that you want to encourage and sustain. Basically, it's their reputation NFT. So it's important that they chose an NFT versus it being a fungible token like most of the other systems. Because one, it's much harder to create an NFT, because also through their platform, anytime that you create an NFT, you need to pay a certain kind of fee. So that decreases if someone wanted to jack the system and just create a bunch of different accounts, that would be, they chose a price range so that it would be dissuade too much of that if that were pursued. Also on the governance, so that choosing the reputation NFT basically covers a lot of the reputation and it covers the reputation and the tokenomics portion. They chose the Casper blockchain, and then they chose to model their governance system after the U.S. Constitution, to both have a solid kind of core, and then also have ways of affecting change in both long-term and short-term capacities. The executive branch in this case is generally the most centralized, but this is effectively what they built into the system. So it's not something that feels as oppressive. So the reputation-based coin, I think we've already gone through some of the principles here, so we can just move on. But so that's where DEVXDAO currently is. They haven't been around for a very long time, so it's kind of hard to say that they're a success. But generally, they have very interesting solutions to problems that have caused a lot of other DAOs to fail in the past. So we'll see how they actually have, if their solutions have solved the longevity and scale problems that most DAOs face. But these are a couple of other examples that have caused DAOs to fail in the past. So, for example, the original DAO in 2016 was caused by a bug in the contract. Even something like reliance on the goodwill of the people and not thinking in terms of game theory, for example, of how people might try to game the system, has also crashed a lot of DAOs. And et cetera, et cetera. There's becoming too centralized over time is also a failure of decentralized organization as well. So voting structures, this is a big part of the governance portion. So, for example, DEVXDAO has worked with is working with the reputation-based voting using NFTs. There are a lot of other benefits and pros and cons to choosing the other voting structures, but everything in blue are the newer, more alternative voting structures that seem to solve a lot of the problems one way or another of the more traditional voting structures that we're accustomed to. So the one coin, one vote voting structure, generally decisions favor the rich and is easily corruptible. one person, one vote is, prone to imprecision, because you can have maybe a more complicated topic, and you can have, some expert in the field, subject matter expert on the field voting on it has the same weight on that topic as, some person that has never even heard of the topic before. So we don't need to go through all of the different types. They're kind of written out here for you, but they are very interesting in terms of, say, like the types of governance and the culture that you're trying to create. These are different ways to kind of methods that I've found in papers to compare voting methods. Just regarding pragmatic concerns, I guess, how much money does it cost to actually hold this vote? Behavioral considerations, like how do people basically behave as a result, and information required from voters, do you need sensitive information, and from how many people? And with a lot of voting, it's actually not quite always as simple mathematically as just counting everything out, but there are voting paradoxes that, depending on the situation that it's applied, these different voting methods will better overcome these axioms, and these axiomatic and paradox. Not these axiomatic, but these voting paradoxes. So coming back to the different templates that you can use from these different companies, the most popular being Aragon, and then Colony, DAOstack, and Moloch DAO. Here's a brief comparison between the few, and then kind of bring things back to Aragon. Just you don't necessarily, because they kind of create this template for you, don't necessarily need to start off with having to think about the complications and the affordances that you need from having to for having to deal with those technical details. Just know that you're on Ethereum, and the goal is to manipulate parameters to see how you can make a story around those kind of parameters to create the social dynamics that you're interested in. And then in summary, use the templates, and then study the different DeFi project tokenomics structures on GitHub, so that you can kind of see how the pros have been doing it. And that's it.
Yes, I think we should open the floor for questions of what anybody has. I know that was kind of a lot to digest, but if anyone has any questions, now's the time. Yeah, and so what would you say? I mean, a lot of times, for a protocol for deciding whether to do a DAO, what would be kind of instances where you wouldn't use a DAO? Is a question like that. For example, Enzyme, a sponsor have this.
You're cutting in and out, by the way. It's hard to hear your question.
Yeah, so I'm thinking what would be an instance where you wouldn't recommend a DAO, or where maybe different DeFi protocols don't use the DAO. I know Enzyme, they don't have a DAO per se. They have a public ticketing system, which is like any kind of support ticketing, but they don't have a DAO. So it's when do you decide to use it? It's the most effective solution for kind of building on features or deciding what happens to a platform, as opposed to the traditional support system where you put features there. Where would you?
So currently, DAOs don't necessarily function quite as effectively as centralized structures in terms of for there's a reason why the military, for example, is like a very, very hierarchical, centralized kind of structure, and a decentralized structure for them would not make a whole ton of sense. But I think DAOs are really useful for basically being able to handle simple governance, because we aren't currently at the technological capabilities to handle sophisticated governance with DAOs. So, for example, if you wanted, and also you have to already know exactly what I guess like development-wise, you already have to be mostly done with whatever's going on. I guess like when it comes to DeFi, you have Uniswap seems to like, and MakerDAO and all these other like DeFi platforms are using it, but Enzyme probably just like from an aesthetic perspective, or just like from a functional perspective, they might not prefer to do that. Maybe once they get a little bit more established or something, that might be more of a thought. But a lot of projects these days start off as centralized structures as opposed to immediately jump into trying to be a DAO.